Focus on love. Love what's in focus. Aim for above because the ceiling's bogus. Focus on love. Love what's in focus. Aim for above because the ceiling is bogus. Focus on love. Love what's in focus. Aim for above because the ceiling. Hello out there. Welcome back to another episode of Famous Rapper Convos, the show where we help rappers form meaningful connections online. Today I'm meeting a very special guest. He is a Bay Area hip-hop star. I recently saw him perform at on a Twitch stream for Complex SF. He is UnLearn the World. UnLearn the World. I have to unlearn how to talk. Unlearn the world. Would you like to say hello to everybody?
Peace. What's going on, everybody out there? UnLearn the World, originally from New York City, now based in the Bay Area. MC, producer, DJ extraordinaire, all things hip hop educator as well. And I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Nice. Yeah. Thanks. I'm excited for this. I loved your performance.
Thank you.
But we've never met. So I just wanted to, take this opportunity to get to know you. So in like about 3 minutes, could you tell me your full story of you as an artist? Like how you first got involved with music and like what path did you take to get to where you are today?
Oh my, superhero origin story, ready, go. So I was born and raised in New York City, birthplace of hip hop, specifically Washington Heights, New York. It's a predominantly Afro-Latino community. My parents are from the Dominican Republic. So I always like to say that I grew up not only in the culture, but in the business of hip hop, right? Like I started rapping when I was 10 years old, mainly just to kind of like have fun and make sense of my own life in an interesting way. Like everybody who I saw who looked like me was expressing themselves through hip hop. And I didn't really get into hip hop until I was probably about 9 or 10. My mother had given me a rap tape, right? Back in the days, we had cassette tape. She had given me a rap tape. And the song Eric B. and Rakim, well, actually, Eric B. for President was the song by Eric B. and Rakim that made me like rap music, right? I have an older brother named Eric, so on this tape, I'm looking at it and I'm like, oh, this song would be interesting. And I, not knowing that this is going to be one of the classic hip hop records that the world is going to know, and it's going to be my foray into this genre of music. And I had like music in general. But then the album that made me want to actually rap and like take rapping seriously was the Nas Illmatic album, and this came out in 1994. I think I was all of maybe 12 or 13 years old, and the song "The World Is Yours" is the song that I attribute to giving me like the battery in my pack, right, so to speak, right. Nas in that song writes, "Writing in my book of rhymes, all the words past the margin," and for whatever reason that kind of struck a chord with me. And literally the next day I went and I went to like what they had Woolworth at the time, but it's like a CVS or a Walgreens equivalent. And I bought a notebook, a Mead composition notebook, and I started taking those rhymes that I was coming up with in my head and started writing them down. And then by the time I was in high school, I was interning for different record labels, trying to not only get signed, but also just kind of learn the business, like working on street teams, A&R departments, different things like that. But then also recording demo tapes, like, and it was that whole process that made me get into the music industry more and more. By the time I was graduating high school, I was actually working at record labels. And then in college, I was touring nationally with well-known artists like Killer Mike before he was like the Killer Mike we know today. Big Daddy Kane, who else? Dead Prez. There was a bunch of people that first tour that I did while I was in college, and then I was trying to create a record label with friends of mine from high school. So, again, I understand it from the culture perspective. I understand it from the business, and I haven't looked back since. Just been grinding in the name of all things hip hop.
Awesome. So, 10 years old, you listen to Eric B. What was that track called again?
Eric B. for President.
Eric B. for President, right. Yeah. And then in high school, I think you listened to Nas's album and started.
Yeah, actually junior high school. I want to say maybe like 7th grade. It was like, yeah.
7th grade. The World Is
Yours.
Man, the World Is Yours. I'm missing all these details. I thought I was going to be able to pull them, and now I feel like I'm letting everyone down right now. The World Is Yours by Nas. That inspired you to buy that notebook, started writing down your rhymes. High school, you were making demo tapes with your friends. College, you were doing live performances with big name artists and working on starting a record label with those friends from high school. And what year was all that happening? Was that still in the 90s?
That was like early 2000s. I want to say by the time I was in college, it was like 2002 is when we really started kind of like paving a way for ourselves. And then by 2003, I was on tour. Um, so yeah, that was that whole era, the early
Okay,
2000s.
cool. So I saw that you dropped 3 albums in the last few years: Saint, Sinner, and Self, Universes, and Light Years. Were
Yes.
those created back then, or were those created more recently?
I would say like more recently, like some of these ideas that are in the album are like as an artist, as a hip hop artist particularly, you wait for like the right song or the right time, the right beat to kind of put a certain kind of song together. So some of these ideas are maybe older, but nonetheless, they're still recent albums. The album that I just dropped last year, Light Years. I prepared most of the album during COVID, during like the pandemic and the lockdown and all of that. But I had been prepping that album prior to that. I've been prepping it and had already started working on beats and was thinking, all right, this is gonna be the album that I'm gonna start working on and really putting my heart into. And then just COVID, I think the one cool thing about being on lockdown is that it allows that time for creativity and for you to really just get in your bag creatively, which I really took advantage of. But aside from that, just also really taking advantage of like the healing process, right? And the self exploration that is I think is required or necessary when we go through moments of isolation and we're not connecting in a communal way that we're used to, right? So like I took all of those like little musings and reflections and I put them in this project. So yeah, these three last albums that I did are all self-produced. So I produced all the tracks on each of these albums.
Oh,
I
wow.
have an album prior to that. My debut album was called The Wake Up Call. You can find it on SoundCloud. I don't even have it on streaming services anymore. But
Nice.
that came out around 2015, and then since then I've just been kind of producing my own projects and then putting out mixtapes here and there. But just continuing to work.
Awesome. Well, when did you start making your own beats?
Um, Started making beats. I want to say 2008. I had a it was interesting because I was doing a lot of online kind of exchanges. A lot of my main fan base when I started like my quote unquote rap career came from the online world. I was a really big
Mm.
featured artist on this website called hiphopgame.com. And this is in the era of hip hop where it was all about the blogs, like literally on the heels of the mixtape era, blogs like Hip Hop Game, Two Dope Boys, Hip Hop DX. Like some of these blogs were really breaking artists. Like this was the new platform prior to Spotify or any of that. So because of my relationship with the folks at Hip Hop Game, they gave me like a weekly column where I would break down lyrics. They also had allowed me to like interview artists and do really cool stuff. So I was amassing kind of a following and like a loyal fan base from there, and they were featuring my songs. And then I put out a mixtape for free called Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, and that really solidified my fan base. So from that point forward, I was just trying to like keep that fan base alive and keep things going. And then when I released my debut project, um, I'm losing track of what I'm trying to get to, but
Hmm. Where so when you released it, were you posting on those blogs, or like what was that process like? You put it up on SoundCloud?
yeah. So this is actually before SoundCloud. This is literally on the brink of the digital wave of music, right? Not a lot of artists at the time were putting out whole recording projects for free in this digital space. So I was kind of like ahead of the game, so to speak. Um, but it was where I was starting to see the industry go, right? Like just kind of having that online presence. And so since that first mixtape, I was putting out, a mixtape a year or every other year. I was putting out a mixtape and a project just to kind of solidify my fan base as an artist, just kind of keep me in the mix, keep me in certain conversations. But all of this was being done while I was trying to be like an adult, right? Like the music industry when I was young, chewed me up, spit me out, and like I was trying to teeter the edge between being a responsible adult making money and not be a starving artist, but then also really trying to satisfy my hunger to be creative and to be a musician and to all of these different things. So it was kind of this weird world where I was putting out music online, but I wasn't really engaging the people. I wasn't doing any live shows. I wasn't shooting videos. And it wasn't until like my personal life started kind of flipping upside down that I was like, this is my opportunity now, not only for my own sanity, but for the sake of my destiny in the way I see it, for me to really kind of push it all the way out there, right? So after a really enlightening trip to Cuba as an artist, I did an artist visa, went to Cuba, learned Afro-Cuban drumming, salsa, all this stuff, and performed out there, did hip-hop education work. Within a year of that trip, I put out my first album. I quit the job that I was working at, and I became a professional artist full time. Not only performing and all of that, but then also teaching hip hop in like schools in the Bay Area. So
Mm.
it was
Wow.
like a full 180 after that trip to Cuba within a year of it, because I just kind of wanted to follow like what I felt was my calling in life, is to be an artist and to try to teach this craft as best as I could.
Yeah. Wow. That is amazing. So you felt that calling come, and it was just the right time. Like, how did you get that opportunity to go to Cuba? Was that just something you decided to do, or did someone offer it, or
Yeah,
how did that
it's
come
really
about?
it's really ironic because it was a Facebook post of a friend of mine from high school. Coincidentally enough, he was like, I need 8 friends of mine to come to Cuba with me. And I was, I had studied the Cuban Revolution in college, and so I was very
Mm.
familiar and kind of like, I love Cuban music and I love all these different things about the country. So I jumped at the chance. I was like, what do we need to do? Where do I need to sign? So he put me in touch with this woman named Sandra. I'll never forget her because my phone call with her, she literally put the battery in my pack. I was like, you could take every dollar I have as long as it's going to this trip. So she really put the energy behind me to take a chance on myself, put up the money, go to Cuba, be out there for 2 weeks in Havana doing all of these things, and it was an eye opening, amazing eye awakening for me. It was just kind of like a spiritual and creative renaissance in my life. So when I came back, I wasn't really the same person. I hated the job. I was already kind of going through an existential crisis, which kind of prompted me to go out there to begin with. But
Yeah.
when I came back, I just couldn't unsee or unfeel the things that I felt. And I just felt different, right? Like I felt different about work. I felt different about my relationship. I felt different about just kind of the humdrum, matter of fact, mundane life that I was kind of existing in, that I knew was contrary to everything that I knew I could offer the world. I could offer myself, really. Um, and then, just kind of putting, like I said, like taking a risk and investing in myself and just saying, you know what, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to figure it out, in terms of this artistry thing, and make it work for myself. So it was like, you know let me be used to not getting paid every 2 weeks. Let me get used to like sacrificing financially to make this happen. And by slowly but surely, when you have that level of dedication, it's not going to happen overnight, but it takes a while. And then slowly you get to a level of comfort or stability, rather, not necessarily comfort, but stability. And then comfort comes, and then you're like, all right, oh, I'm actually making a living as an artist. Oh, snap, this is great. And then you're like, you're living the dream. And that's kind of the process of it, at least for me.
Hmm. Awesome. So, this was like around 2008, I think you said. You went to Cuba. You came
No, I
back
went to Cuba. Yeah, actually, it's more recent than that. I went to Cuba in 2014. Right,
2014.
2008. Yeah, 2008, I was a producer, right? So
Oh,
and
right.
I think that actually brings me back to my original point, because you had asked how long I've been producing or what got me into producing. So as an artist on in this digital space, I'm always getting beats from like producers from Sweden, from Chicago, from all over the place. They're just sending me beats in my inbox, and I'm developing these relationships with these producers. So I'm giving them ideas for them to make me beats, but then they would like either never respond, or they'd be late to respond, and then the inspiration is gone. So I got tired of waiting. Like I'm a really impatient person, and I need a kind of a refinement in terms of my creativity. When I'm inspired, I gotta go, like literally.
Hmm.
So one of my producer friends gave me like a cracked version of FL Studio. Back then it was called Fruity Loops, digital audio workstation, and I was making beats from there. And I just kind of got used to the idea of, oh, this is how you create a drum pattern. This is how you sample. This is how you do all these different things. So I started really just utilizing it to just kind of flesh out ideas. And that was kind of my foray into it. And then I kind of left it alone for a while, and then I came back to it I want to say around 2012, I started getting back into making beats and what that was. And then just kind of as a hip hop educator, I was starting to teach beats, and just from teaching beats, you're learning yourself, right? You're just kind of like, all right, how do I refine my skill set to be able to convey this to somebody else? And just by virtue of doing that, I was literally making 4 or 5 beats a day for 3 years, just
Wow.
consistent, and you're developing your own style. And even throughout this entire course of time, I wasn't rapping on the beats I was making. I was literally creating beats, trying to work with artists to give them beats, just kind of get my name out there. um but slowly but surely, I started making beats that kind of fit me and that were really inspiring lyricism for myself. So I was like, all right, well, let me start kind of putting together a beat tape. And then that beat tape ended up being an extended beat tape, right? Rather than just 8 beats, it became 16. And then rather than just 16 instrumentals, it was 16 songs that I was writing to. So just by happenstance of having the equipment and just kind of going through that process, you just develop this. I want to write on this beat. I want to record here. And, because I have the recording equipment in my house, I was just kind of just experimenting and then finding cohesive themes in my music to put together projects. And that's how the whole self-produced thing came. So very
Hmm.
proud of the work that I've been able to do as a self-produced artist.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. So you were making all those beats. Do you still have those beats? What happened to them?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's funny because I've gone through so many computers over the last maybe 5, 6 years. So, in fact, what's funny is I dropped an album called Universes not too long ago. I want to say 2018. Yeah, 2018. I dropped this album called Universes. And originally, the album was going to be a beat tape. But then what happened was my laptops, both of my laptops that had beats on them, got stolen in San Francisco. I had gone to a party,
Oh.
mistakenly left my backpack in the car, and they basically stole it, right? So I had to work from scratch, like not only having to get a new computer and all of that stuff, but also recreate these beats that I had. I had hundreds of beats in these machines. So I really worked diligently, like I was saying, 3, 4, 5 beats a day to try to get back my catalog. And in that process, I'm writing songs to these beats and all of that. So I said, originally, I just wanted to write one verse for each of the beats, right? To make this kind of small EP. And that's why it was called Universes, because it's universes, right? Like just one verse, universe, right? Um,
Oh, nice,
but then
nice.
just by virtue of just continuing to build a catalog, it just became a whole cohesive album, and I just decided to put that out. And it was received really, really well. It was received really well. I think a lot of people who were already fans of my music saw the growth on that, not only as a lyricist but also as a producer. And then it slowly kind of started stepping into having my own sound, so that by the time Light Years came out last year, I would like to think that I now have like a signature sound. People will hear an Unlearn the World record and know that it's me making the beat, that it's me on the rhymes, and how that synergy works in the studio.
Yeah. Wow. I love it. I gotta say, most of my favorite rappers all make their own beats. Like
Who are your
you
favorite
can just
rappers?
like J. Cole, Mac Miller, Tyler the Creator,
Yeah,
Kanye West. Like I don't know,
there you
there's
go.
more that they do
Yeah,
like
those are,
rapping and beats. And Unlearn the
yeah.
World, of course.
There you
And
go. Thank
Unlearn
you.
the World.
Thank you. Yeah, it's good. That's some good company to be amongst all those guys. I love all
Yeah,
of them.
totally. I liked what you said about universe, one verse. Like what if the whole
Hmm.
universe was just one verse?
There you go. I mean, I like to often say we're all a figment of God's imagination, right? So like, it could be. We could exist in an algorithm of some sort or in a line of poetry. Who knows? Like, who really knows? I contemplate this a lot, but
Yeah,
it's interesting to think about.
I love it. Okay, so for people that are unfamiliar with your music, if they like, what is the first song that people that are unfamiliar with you should listen to?
Oh boy. I would say two. One would be the new Rakim, which is on the Universes album. Literally named it after a line in the song. But it just kind of, if you're a hip hop head and you know Rakim's position in the pantheon of hip hop gods, right? For me to call myself the new Rakim is a provocative statement. It's almost like heretical.
Hmm.
But I wanted to kind of give that level of controversy so that you're actually open to listening to it. Like, let me see what this guy has to offer, right? So I would say that one because I kind of chronicle my life, but you're also able to see my ability as a lyricist, my wordplay, my introspection, my punchlines. There's a lot of things going on there. I would also say the song "Let There Be Light." That's the first song on the Light Years album. It's the intro to the album. It really gives you a good sense of what is my subject matter and my content as a lyricist, right? So if you're into spiritual awakening, if you're into social justice, if you're into introspection, if you're into like any of that stuff, if you're into just gritty hip hop, all of those things are going to be encompassed in both of those songs. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So I think that those are the two to really, really check out. And then, I have my own personal favorites, but I think if somebody was like, I want to learn about Unlearn the World, I want to know who he is, those are the two songs to go to.
Okay, 100%. Great answer. So what well, how would you define the term conscious hip hop?
I was just reading a Facebook about the term conscious hip hop and whether or not
Really?
it's at all relevant anymore. Yeah, it was just interesting because it's like we all I think we all do ourselves a disservice by saying conscious, right? Like what does that imply? Does that mean I'm shopping at Whole Foods? Does that mean I'm doing yoga in the morning? What does that mean exactly? Does that mean I'm protesting? Like what does conscious hip hop mean, right? Cuz conscious is just aware, to be aware, right? Just the same thing as hip hop. We call it hip hop because hip is to be hip to something, to be aware or to be in the know of what's cool. That's where we get the term hip hop from. So conscious is the same thing. So hip hop is already conscious just by nature of the lexicon, by nature of the language we're using. Hip hop and the artistry and the culture of hip hop is a culture of awareness. It is an artistic expression of awareness, right? Knowledge being the fifth element of hip hop when you do the history of it. It's all awareness. So I wouldn't really define conscious hip hop, I guess, is to imply politically aware hip hop or social justice based hip hop or spiritually based hip hop, which I think there's a total lane for that. I'm fans of a lot of artists who do it. I no longer put myself in that category. Um, Even though I do talk about like some real things that are going on. I talk about my own spiritual struggles and conflicts. I talk about my own like living struggles and conflicts, what it is to be a black man, what it is to be Latino in America. Like all of these are subject matters that I thread throughout all of my music and all of my forms of creativity. But to try to define it as conscious and put it as something other than what rap music is I think we're doing ourselves a disservice that way. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
shout out to all the people who consider themselves conscious artists because I listen to all of them, and I'm really I draw a lot of inspiration from those artists who are considered that.
Yeah, totally. The way I would define it, if you care at all, is like a conscious rap song is like an accurate portrayal of how the artist actually thinks. So like if
That
you
makes
think
sense.
about them being conscious and then like they're putting those real thoughts right into their songs.
Yeah. No, I would totally say that. And I would the only thing I would add to that is I think that giving artists the benefit of the doubt. I think most hip hop artists do that. I know it's popular to say like, artists don't have messages in their music anymore, but if you look at like some of these younger artists, I think that they're saying what they feel. They're saying what they think, right? It may not be as in depth as we're accustomed to or that we would like, but I still think that they're in a circumstance where they're saying what they feel.
Hmm.
um and I think it's incumbent on older artists to kind of impart that level of wisdom and guidance to these younger artists to really take their talent to the next level of moving the people, which is what we need. I think the younger generation, if anything, needs to be spiritually and mentally motivated to do more than just like pop bottles and shoot people, right? Like
Yeah.
for sure.
100%. So
Yes.
you went to Cuba, you learned all those drums, you made all those beats, you lost
Yeah.
two computers, you kept making beats, more and more beats. Eventually, you rapped on your beats. So you jumped in and started doing this full time. Have you been doing it full time without a part-time job since then,
Yeah,
2014, or
I've
what's that
been
been
a
like?
yeah, I've been a hip hop artist and a hip hop educator since 2015. So this is going to be my 6th year doing music and music education full time. 100.
Wow.
Yeah.
How was that hard to get that to work out?
Yeah. I mean, like it is in I don't think it's any harder or more difficult than any artist trying to pursue their dream, right? Like you get all the naysayers, you get a lot of people saying you're crazy, that you're never gonna make it. Always have something to fall back on. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like I heard it when I was in school, right? I heard it in high school, I heard it in college, I heard it all throughout my adult life. Like, what happens when rap doesn't work? What are you gonna do? How are you gonna pay the bills? And I'm like, well, what happens when life doesn't work, right? Like, what happens when you're caught up in the muck and mire of being just kind of a cog in the wheel for corporations, or just chasing money without any passion, without any drive? You're literally thriving financially, but you're barely surviving existentially. You understand what I'm saying? And like that,
Hmm.
for me, it's always been about the kind of man that I've wanted to be since I was a very little kid. Since I was like 12, 13 years old, I've always kind of had the foresight to try to imagine, what kind of person do you want to be, right? And this is something I impart on my kids, and I impart on my students as well. Like, think about the person you want to be, and what that requires, right? More so than the job title you want to have, or how much money you want to make, because that money's not going to do anything for you if you don't have some level of existential plan in terms of who you want to become, right? So that's how I've always seen it. And as financially successful as I was at one point in my life, I didn't feel right. Like, there was something in my soul that was saying, this is not for you. And I think the world and the universe had to create a circumstance in my life to kind of turn things upside down in order for me to say, you know what, you're right. Let me go follow my passion. And in doing so, all these different opportunities and other things were starting to manifest. So it was almost like a spiritual experience, right? Like taking that leap of faith and then riding on a miracle. Like, that's
Mm.
exactly how I feel like my life has been for the last 6 years. It's like, I believe this much about myself. Let me just go out here and try to see what it does. And it works out all the time.
Yeah.
So now you take that leap of faith, it works out. So now you're grounded in your conviction, right? I am firmly grounded in the kind of person I am, in the pursuit of my passion. And there's not a lot that can deter me from that. Even in setbacks, even in bad times, you still recognize, like, all right, there's a purpose for this, because on the other side of this, I'm still going to be me, and I'm still going to be able to kind of pursue this life that I've been wanting to pursue since I was a child. So I'm really grateful for that.
Yeah, I love it. I love to see like people following their passions,
Hmm.
artists being able to be truly who they are and who they want to be.
Yeah, for sure.
Are Could you tell me like three key lessons that you learned from the process of jumping in and riding that miracle?
um it's a really good question. I would say, as cliche as it may sound, patience,
Mm.
right? I think success is nebulous and it's subjective. So you can't compare what you define as success with somebody else's version of success, right? We're in the social media era of humanity, so everything is done by comparison, right? We're looking at other people's lives and their career fields, and we're comparing it to ours. And does it match? Are they more popping than I am? Are they getting more likes and followers? And like, we get caught up in that all too
Hmm.
often, and not realize, like, how do I feel at the end of the day? Do I feel like I've contributed? Do I feel like I've done something? Right? If this ended tomorrow, will I have something that people would finally know, that I was here and that I was loved and that I loved in return? Right?
Mm.
These are the metrics by which I measure anything. So patience, number one. And that means, like, not only patience in terms of seeing it come to fruition, but patience in dealing with the naysayers, right? Dealing with the baby mom who's saying, "Hey, your kids need child support, and like, you're a fucking piece of shit dad," or like your parents saying, like, "When are you gonna grow up?" Or your friends, like, wanting to go out on vacation and you can't afford it, or you don't have the money because you want to put it into studio time or buying a beat, or whatever the case is. Like, that takes a lot of strength to not,
Yeah.
like, kowtow and capitulate to the whims of other people, especially when you're talented, right? Because they're going to use you for what they want. So
Mm.
patience, number one. Number two, really honesty. You got to really be honest with yourself, right? Am I in this for the long haul? Do I have what it takes? Am I talented enough? Do I really feel like I'm talented enough? Do I really feel like I'm disciplined enough, right? Because talent is one thing, but the discipline to go at it every day, even when you're exhausted, is what separates the men from the boys, so to speak, right? That's when
Mm.
the rubber meets the road, just the consistency.
Yeah.
So
You also have to
patience,
love it enough.
100%, right? Like, and redefine what you mean by love. Like, what about this culture do you love? What about this craft do you love? Do you just love the pomp and circumstance of the show and getting groupies and getting money, or do you really love the process of creating and literally taking an idea, dancing in your brain and putting it out for the world to see? I think that is the more transformative and transcendent aspect of artistry that all too often younger artists don't think about, right? Like that is the most empowering aspect of what we do as creatives. So patience, honesty, and I don't even know what the last one would be. I'm just gonna like go on a whim here and just kind of like, you know trust in yourself. I think, honesty and trust are kind of synonymous with another. They kind of work with one another, right? You have to be honest with yourself, because if you're honest with yourself, then you can trust yourself. You can trust you at the end of the day. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? Like, regardless of what people tell you, you know what you feel. And you know you're feeling it, and it comes from an honest place and not a place of complete delusion. Right.
Hmm.
Um, and I think a lot of artists are completely deluded in a bad way. And I think that there are artists who are appropriately deluded in a good way. Right.
Mm.
Where the world's gonna tell you you're crazy, but because you have that level of delusion, you will be successful, right? There's
Yeah.
plenty of artists like that. The Salvador Dali's of the world, the Picassos of the world, the Kanye West of the world, and like, people who we thought were like eccentric loonies, but they were genius in what they were doing. And just because we couldn't see it didn't mean that they didn't see something tangible in terms of how they're contributing to the larger body of the human experience.
Hmm. 100%. So, and you also snuck another lesson in there, which I would say was create your own definition of success.
100%, right? Yeah, it's just a matter of setting that criteria for yourself. Like, who do I want to be? What do I want to be? You know what I'm saying? Like, it has less to do about money and accolades and more to do about like just kind of feeling satisfied, feeling like you've done the job that you were put on earth to do. And
Mm,
that's how I feel with what I'm doing.
100%. So this is kind of a related question, but maybe the answer is different. If you were to go back, if you could go back and give yourself 6 years ago 3 pieces of advice, what advice would you give yourself?
Be prepared to be broke. Like, prep for it, right? like
Yeah.
prep for it. Save money, get some other cool side hustles, because like that was the one thing that was the most stressful for me, right? Like, not knowing when my next dollar is coming, right? Working education jobs, right? Teaching rapping, teaching beat making, and then having to wait 8 weeks to get a paycheck. Meanwhile, you have to I have kids, so you got to buy your kids stuff. You got rent that's due, adult responsibility. So I think you got to be prepared for that. Like, if anybody comes to you in the beginning of your artist career and says, okay, you have to be prepared to be flat broke for 3 years, do you still want to do this? I would say 9 out of 10 people would probably say, nah, I'm good. Right? It's kind of like that experiment that they give to kids. Like, you can have a donut now, or you could wait 20 minutes and have two donuts. And most kids say they want the donut then and there, right? So I think it's the same thing as it relates to artists. If you tell an artist, first and foremost, you're going to have to sacrifice and be willing to deal with a lot of discomfort for at least 3 years in the beginning of actively pursuing your career. Now, mind you, when I say actively pursuing your career, I mean giving up everything else you're doing and focusing solely on this, right? Because I think we often talk about our careers, but it's like, yeah, you're rapping, but you also have a job, right? For years I was rapping, but I had a job, so I could pay for studio time. I could do this. I just wasn't able to go out to do shows or anything because I was bound by this job to have to be there at 9 a.m. I couldn't be in the club until 2, right? So it just
Right.
didn't work for me at the time. And I built a lot of discipline as an artist. I built a lot of talent as an artist during that era. But I wouldn't go as far as to say that that was a rap career because I wasn't actively pursuing it. And it wasn't until I started saying, okay, I'm going to actively pursue my rap career. This is what's going to, so what I mean is, so you got to deal with, you got to be prepared for those discomforts for at least the first 3 years. So if somebody came to me, or if me came to me, like on some Back to the Future hype,
Yeah.
like Doc Brown in the DeLorean, like Marty, like I would say, like, stack some money, try to, like, know that this is going to work out for you, but this is, here's a way to make it easier, more,
Hmm.
to me, the less tense.
So
um
would you try to save 3 years of expenses?
no, I mean, I don't think I spend money like a dope dealer, so I'm the last person to save money like that, for real, for real. But what I would say is, like, at least try to find, like, now, I'm in a place of stability, but I'm always side hustling. I'm always trying to figure out, like, all right, what other streams of income can I do to make a play here and there so I can put this money back in the business, which is my creativity, right?
Hmm.
If I had that level of discipline back then, I could probably have avoided a lot of hardship, you know what I mean, and been in
Yeah.
a better space mentally to create, because that's what we're really looking for. We're looking just for the ease and convenience of being able to do our art from a very authentic point without having to worry about the stressors of life. You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
sometimes those stressors aid the creative process. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a lot of artists who've done their best work when they were poor and not a dollar to their name. Um,
Yeah.
so there's a
Because
gift and
that
a
that is
curse with it.
authentic. That like
Right,
that's real life for a
100%.
lot of people.
Yeah, 100%. But again, I think when you're living in that kind of life, you're still dedicated to your craft. When we look at the Jean Michel Basquiat's of the world, or other artists who were quote unquote homeless, or they were just doing their art. It wasn't like they were homeless and working a temp job and then trying to do their art on the side. They were actively doing their art. However long
Hmm.
it took them to become quote unquote successful, or to pop through popular culture, or to make a break for it. You can do a case by case basis and analysis, but ultimately, it's just kind of paying dues, right? Like, that's what we call it. We call it paying dues for a reason. So
Hmm.
I would just tell myself to just be patient, and to just expect that, because I think that was in my come up, that was the most frustrating thing for me, is like,
Yeah.
just trying to still be fresh inside, or trying to still be an artist, but like having to worry about the first of the month.
Hmm.
For real.
Exactly. And finding ways to make money is not easy.
Right.
Like without
Exactly.
just working for somebody else. Like trying to
Right.
do it without working for somebody else is very hard.
Yeah, just that you need an entrepreneurial spirit to do this independent music thing. You know what I mean? At least,
Yeah.
even if you sign to a major deal later, I think you still needed that entrepreneurial spirit. Like, I can do this, I can do it myself, and
Hmm.
try to get help that way.
Cool. So you mentioned your kids a few times.
Mhm.
When did you become a father?
When I was 25, well, actually rewind it before that, because so I moved out to California back in 2003. Part of the reason is because the music world wasn't working out for me in New York. I was staying at my brother's house after being evicted out of my apartment. I had a girlfriend at the time. She lived out here, so I moved out here to be with her. We had two kids together, two wonderful kids together. Um, the relationship didn't work, but she had an older son at the time. So I raised him until I had my own. So I've been a father one way or another since I was 22.
Mm.
Um, and then I didn't have my own biological first son until I was 25, right? You know what I'm saying? So now I'm knocking on 40's door, and I have a teenager, and I have a kid who's in his adolescent phase, and it's a wonderful thing to watch, and very scary at the same time. And I'm learning so much just from watching them. I'm learning how to be a better parent. I'm learning how to be a better human. I'm learning how to deal with my own traumas so that they don't have to heal from my stuff. You know what I mean? So it's a very reflective place to be in as a parent.
Yeah. How did life change for you after having the biological son?
Um my first son being born was like a spiritual experience. Like, I literally saw him, and I saw how his face resembled mine, and there was something that happened in that moment that you can only capture on like movies, right? Like you'll, I think you see it in movies often, but it was just completely transcendent. Um,
Hmm.
and
It's actually physical.
yes,
You can
it's a,
scan your brain.
you have a physiological response to watching your own child be born, and then something popping out of another human being that looks like you. It's, I can't even articulate
Mind blowing.
how mind blowing it is, right? Yeah, so it gave me a better, it gave me a bigger and better sense of responsibility. Um, it gave me this motivation that I hadn't had before, and I had always been motivated, but this is like, this hits different. You know what I'm
Mm,
saying? You're responsible for this life, right? You're putting a life into the world, and this person is going to hurt or help people based on the guidance that you provide. That's a lot of responsibility, right? Like just to
wow.
own that. So it's never been lost on me in terms of being a parent, being a father, like what I have to contribute to raising these men, right? Even if they're children, I have to recognize they're going to be men soon enough, and they're going to be in this world with no shelter and no protection other than what I have given them in terms of guidance. So let me kind of not fuck this up, or
Yeah.
try not to fuck this up. I think all parents kind of mess things up, but you know, you
Some
do your best.
parts.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Does he make rap music?
No, my kids are over it. Like I mean, it was important for me when I first started like really getting into my career and taking it seriously and going through like those broke phases of making sure that they were involved in very important aspects of this life. Like they saw me, they would come to my shows in certain cases when they were allowed to, and they would see me perform, and I would take them to events, and they'd see me like, you know, network and mingle and do all of this, because it was important for me to have them see me do that, right? Just so they understand what I do, right?
Hmm.
And when they were younger, they were into like dancing, break dancing. They were into rapping a little bit. They still kind of make beats every now and again. We'll make beats together. But they're, you know, my older son, he's an athlete, so he's really into sports, and that's his world. And he's into girls, and that's a whole different ball of wax. And my younger son, he's more like a, he has an engineer mind. He likes to build things. He likes to, like, you know, create in that fashion. But
Play
they both,
Minecraft.
yeah, 100%. That's all. That's what he loves, right? But I think
Yeah.
both of them still have like a creative aspect to them, like in terms of the worlds that they want to develop for themselves. So I'm happy about that.
Nice. I love that. Cool. So let's talk about your music career a little bit more. So you
Certainly.
dropped these three albums over the last 3 years, and I'm curious, like, looking forward, like 12 months from now, April 2022, where do you hope to be? What's different from now? And like, what are the next steps you're taking to get there?
Oh man, I see myself touring a lot, being on the road, internationally as well as nationally. You know, working with some more well-known artists. I think that, you know, I think we're in a different space in the world of hip hop where aging isn't a factor anymore, or as much as it used to be. Where like I think a few years ago in hip hop culture, it was like it's a young man's game. If you're over 35, this is not the thing for you. And I think that that's a complete lie. There are artists right now who are extremely successful, even in their latter years, or what we would consider their latter years as it relates to hip hop. I would say four of the five Grammy nominated rappers are over 35 years old. So, in
Hmm.
terms of commercial viability, in terms of commercial success, you still have that lane. I think you get older enough to be able to articulate your story better in a way that, you know, people appreciate. And so I see myself totally like still being active as an MC, as a producer. Ultimately, what I'm looking to do is develop other artists. You know what I mean? Not only just like the um, the collaborators that I have creatively, like friends of mine and artists that I work with on an everyday basis, but the students that I work with. You know, just like, you know, I've taught probably over 20,000 students in the last 6 years as an
Whoa.
educator, right? One way or another, through assemblies, through one on one classes, coaching. So even if just three of them decided to be rappers or producers and come out years later and drop an amazing album, I think I've done my job. Like that's what, you know what I'm saying? Like that's what I want. I want to continue to do that. But I also have this social justice component of what I do, that it's about like how does hip hop become the vehicle for people of color and marginalized communities to gain some level of equity in this society, right? So continuing that pathway, right? Like I came from a performing arts background. I went to performing arts high school. How dope would
Mm.
it be in 10 years for me to be able to create a performing arts high school that's rooted in hip hop culture, right? And have them all over the country, all over the world. Like that's where I'm starting to see things go in terms of my career and what I want to do as an artist, as a healer, one way or another, right? My music, I want it to be healing. I want to be able to inject love in my music and people to receive that and feel that, but I also have to kind of heal myself and go through that entire process. So by April of next year, I expect to not achieve all of those things, but at least be in that space, right? You know, things will open up hopefully, so we're not like on lockdown anymore. I'll be able to hit some festivals and do some really cool stuff. I'm also getting into film work, right? Like a lot of film. I wouldn't consider myself a director or a filmmaker, but I can definitely I appreciate the craft of filmmaking so much. I'm a film buff. I've always been a film buff. So for me to like work with directors to produce really high end videos, either my videos or somebody else's, um, to just kind of explore my creativity in the visual landscape as opposed to just music. I think that that's another lane for me, right? I'm finding more and more ways to apply my brand of creativity into different mediums. So I want to start pursuing that more and more. So what you're going to see from Unlearn the World over the next year are a great deal more videos bordering on the experimental, on the absurd, weird things, but all keeping it traditional hip hop, keeping it, you know, relevant to the culture and the culture that I come from, and really kind of speaking to the social condition of our world, and you know, initiating rage, but also initiating healing, like, you know, or expressing rage and initiating healing. That's kind of like the twofer that you get with my brand of lyricism and what I'm trying to bring to the table. So I want to do a lot more of that. I want to work with a lot more artists, R&B artists, rock artists. I want to kind of expand my brand of creativity into these other fields. So I'm
Mm.
really excited to go down that pathway.
Awesome. So you're looking for live shows, music videos,
Mm-hmm.
networking, and collaborating with other artists,
Yeah.
and
Also, a lot
those
of
are the main
like
three.
TV and commercial licensing, like in terms of beats and music. Like, so hopefully, you know, you'll see some of my music on commercials and television and especially movies. So really looking to try to get into that and break into that world.
Mm,
You know,
cool.
more often than not.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you do hip hop education. Do
Mhm.
you offer like private lessons to people online?
Yeah, no, certainly. I've done private beat making lessons for the last few years. So if people are interested in learning how to make beats or getting better at making beats, you know, I'm always available for those kind of one-on-one private lessons. Same thing with emceeing. You know, if you're looking to become a better artist, you want to be able to write lyrics, or you're a singer but you can't put words to paper but you have melodies. I help a lot of my friends and collaborators like that. So whether it's private lessons or if you're really talented and we're able to collaborate on some things, I'm always willing to teach, right? Like that's kind of like my personality as a human being, right? Um,
Yeah.
my numerology, my life path number is 4, and if you are a 4 life path number in numerology, you are the teacher. So I think
Mm,
it's kind of instinctual and inherent in terms of what I like to do.
cool. How can people, if somebody's interested in paying you for that, how can they find you or reach out to you? What's the best way? Your email or Instagram?
Yeah, Instagram or email. So my email is info@unlearntheworld.com. All of my social media handles are unlearned. So you can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram. I have my website, unlearntheworld.com. You can reach me there and kind of check out some of my music and all that other stuff. So yeah, if people wanted to get in touch with me for private lessons or just to kind of chop it up, I'm available. I'm accessible.
Nice. And do you do anything else? Like, can somebody pay you for a feature or to like produce a song for them or like stuff like that?
Yeah, no, always. I mean, that's kind of like, you know, the bread and butter, as it will, as it were. Like, totally. If you're working on a project, you like my brand of lyricism, you want me on a verse, we can totally collaborate. I'm open to it. We can discuss, you know, what your plans are for the song and what you want to do. If you're in the market for beats and you want to work on, you know, exclusive production that I'm not selling online, because I don't sell my beats online. I work with directly with artists and try to develop a craft and a sound and all of these different things. So if you're interested in that, we can certainly talk and kind of figure it out from there.
Cool. Um, what what has been like, I don't know, maybe over the last, yes, like the last 7, 6 years, like what has been your biggest moneymaker? Like what's been paying the bills for you?
I mean, hip hop education more so than anything else, right? Like just having the opportunity to develop artists, having the opportunity to consult and develop curriculum as it relates to hip hop and hip hop culturally responsive pedagogy, which is like an elaborate way of saying using hip hop to teach. That's really been hitting the mark because I think we're in a very unique time in the culture, right? And I think hip hop as a culture is starting to make massive inroads into the space of education kind of as a social justice movement to begin with, just to have that equity. And we're having those conversations about meeting kids where they're at, whether they're in the inner city or in a private school in the suburbs. I think hip hop becomes the mode of cultural expression for young people in general. And being able to teach anything using hip hop is a vitally important resource, as we're going to see over the next 20 years. So that's what's paying the bills. Artistry is also paying the bills, but when it comes to artistry, my philosophy in terms of the money I make with that is that it goes right back into the business, right? Like, so I'm not taking my the biggest thing I've ever done for myself, and I regret it to this day, is I received a royalty check for my first album for like $2,500, right? I bought a car with it. Love the car, don't have it anymore. Regret ever having spent the money to buy it to begin with, even though I love that car and I had really great memories in it. Nonetheless, that money could have been better served had I just put it right back into the business and started working on another project now with this kind of capital, right? Because you got to see yourself as a business, you got to see yourself as an entrepreneur in this kind of new DIY space that we're in as artists and creatives. So if you're going to receive any money from doing what you do as an artist, keep that money there and put it right back out there. You know what I'm saying? Because it's going to
Hmm.
come back and it's going to come back tenfold, right? Like you're just going to keep on, it's no different than like hustling in the streets in one way or another. Like it's the re-up money, you put it back out in the streets and it comes back to you. You just have to have a plan time and again. So I try to keep that money separate from the money that's paying my bills and keeping my lights on and buying me food and stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense. Cool. So looking at where you're trying to get 12 months from now, like, so imagine you had a magic wand that you could recruit any one person to either be part of your team or a friend of yours. Like, what type of person would you want to attract and why?
um I would want to attract, as a member of my creative team, a vocalist producer, right? Somebody who can make beats but also can sing their ass off.
Mm,
I would love that. Or they don't even need to make beats. If they could play an instrument like a piano, or they could play a guitar or something like that, even like a horn or something, I think that that would be so beneficial to my own creativity. Just to be able to sit in studio sessions with them and be able to vibe off each other and jam with one another, and I can make a beat while they play piano, and then we could work on melodies together. I can add lyrics. So I would love that kind of, and that's the kind of synergy that I look for with any artist that I'm working with. Talent that I'm like, wow, I'm really inspired by what you do, and then just kind of building off of that to create these, what I like to call moments, not just pieces of music, not just songs. I like to create moments, right? When you're like listening to it and you're like, damn, this is a time capsule for how I feel. You know what I mean? Like
right.
that's the kind of intent that I'm going into it with. So having people who have that kind of vision and that motivation is, they're far and few between, but when you have them, it's the magic that you're able to create is amazing.
Hmm. And preferably somebody in the Bay Area.
I mean, hip hop is so global now. The world is so much smaller now because of Zoom. Ideally, you would want to have somebody in person and be able to vibe with them on that again. But I've been doing Zoom sessions. I've been doing Zoom classes. Like, it's we're in such a smaller place in the world now. Like the globe, because of the internet, is like a village. So you're able to access anybody wherever they're at.
Mm, yeah, totally. So cool. So I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about freestyle rapping. Is
Yeah.
this something that you do?
Yes, very much so. I started
How,
my rap career as a freestyle artist. Um, I am the director of ROTC, which is an event called the Return of the Cipher. It was an event that we had in San Francisco on Sundays at the historic Boom Boom Room in the Fillmore district of San Francisco.
Mm.
And we ran that for 7 years. Like, every Sunday we were getting on that stage with a live band, with a DJ, classic hip hop jam, and we would freestyle. So I'm very grounded in freestyling.
How did you first learn how to freestyle?
At first it was like kind of mental songwriting. Like as a kid, when I was like 10, I was like coming up with lines in my head, and then I would just kind of find other words to rhyme with these lines that are in my head, and then you just kind of get used to freestyling. When I started really getting into rap, me and my brothers would freestyle all the time. We would go to the roof of my building and we would just have ciphers. It was my older brother Eric, who barely rapped, but he just liked to be around it. My brother Chuck, who is like, he was rapping before I was rapping, and kind of put me on to exactly what it is to be a artist and a rapper. So we were doing that all the time. In high school, I was battle rapping MCs all day off the top of my head. It was just kind of something that you did. Even in college, it was the same thing. So like you never really lose it. You just stop using it at a certain point. But then when I started transitioning into being a full time artist, it was one of those things that I had to like always keep, you know, on top of, like
Practice.
just being
Yeah.
able to like practice and do improvisation. And to be honest with you, like just that the craft of freestyling has helped me so much and is very instrumental in my overall creative process. Like writing lyrics, I start with freestyling. I start with kind of freestyling cadences and rhythms and melodies and all of these, and then I'm adding words to it. And depending on the right mood, depending on the inspiration, I can craft a whole song without having to write anything.
Mm.
And I know a lot of rappers say that nowadays, but like for me, it hits a little different because I'm trying to deliver a message. So to be able to eloquently deliver a message in your music without having to put pen to paper, I think is a craft that is it's not spoken about enough, about the level of genius that entails.
Yeah, because you have to. I mean, you have to really believe what you're saying because you're just doing it. You're delivering it straight
Right.
from your brain.
And there's something very metaphysical about it, right? Like, you have to have an extensive vocabulary, so you have to have all these words in reserve, like in the tuck, ready to go. um but then also when you hit your stride, when you're hitting a flow, you're tapping into something else. You're tapping into something that's otherworldly, and you're if you allow yourself to become a vessel for this level of truth that you're tapping into, something else can happen. You know what I'm saying? Like something very transcendent and spiritual can happen in that moment, whether it's with
Hmm.
a group of MCs or it's you on stage in front of an audience. I think, I've had those moments on stage where I forgot where I was, and people are looking at me like, yo, did you hear what you just did? And like, you know what I mean? Like, you appreciate that. And
Blackout.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. Complete blackout. And you're like tapping into something else.
that's awesome. Um, I wanna hear a little bit more about these ciphers on the roof with your brothers.
Yeah.
What did that actually look like? Like, were you just saying random shit in a circle? Were you like doing exercises, or like were you picking words, or like what did that actually look like?
It would involve my older brother or one of my older brothers beatboxing and me rapping. Um, Sometimes it would involve weed. 100%. You know what I'm saying? It
Uh-huh.
would
Yeah.
involve maybe we were just banging on a table, like lunchtime, banging on a table. A lot of the time it took place, if it wasn't on the roof, it was in my living room, and we were putting on like an instrumental beat tape, right? I had a friend of mine who eventually became a manager at one point in my career. Um, who he had given me a instrumental beat tape from, so side A is like a 90-minute tape, side A, side B, nothing but rap beats that were from like famous songs or whatever the case is. And we would just pop that tape in and just go crazy. I would just freestyle forever, and we would come up with topics. My brothers would throw me words, and I would use the words. And like, and these are techniques and routines that I even do performing, right? Like if I'm rapping or freestyling, somebody could throw me a word and I can flip it or whatever the case is. Sometimes are better than other times, of course, but it's freestyle. It's all improvisation, and it's no different than like hitting licks on a guitar or playing improvisationally on a piano. Your voice is the instrument. You know what I mean?
Hmm. And was it the same kind of transcendent experience of being a vessel for the words, or was that something that developed later on in your life?
I think it developed later on, like as I got more into spirituality and all of that. I didn't see it when I was 13 as like, oh, I'm gonna be a vessel for truth. Like it wasn't. I didn't have that kind of motivation at 13. I just wanted to talk fly and like be
Mm,
impressive.
yeah,
But when as an adult, like I started noticing that, and I started noticing it only because I'm grounded in some level of spirituality, and I started recognizing like first I had to start recognizing the transformative quality of the hip hop jam in and of itself, right? Like that. I've been looking at it and I'm like, wait a minute, there's something metaphysical going on in this space, let alone on stage or me rapping or whatever. This space in and of itself is creating an energy field that can allow me to tap into higher realms of consciousness if I allow myself to do it. Um, and do it sober too, because yeah, you can smoke weed and get high and do that, and you can drink, and sometimes people think they're the world's greatest rapper when they're drunk.
I think.
They think exactly,
Yeah.
but what's so funny for me is that like I was literally like freestyling my life away every Sunday at this boom boom room for years sober. You know what I'm saying? I never wanted to be on stage high. I never wanted to be on stage drunk. So I was doing it with a sober mind and being able to like kind of tap into a formula that allowed me to just kind of freestyle very well, but then also be able to like when you have that band and you have that synergy between the live instruments, the DJ, the crowd, everything, that is the environment that allows you to tap into something else.
Hmm.
So
The vibrations of the room.
exactly. So in doing so, like you find yourself just like, all right, what do I want to say? How do I want to say it? And as you're asking yourself those questions, the answers are just coming to you impulsively because you're just doing it. You're asking yourself how you're going to do it, but you're not creating the plan. The plan's just happening, and you just got to
Mm-hmm.
let it go where it's going to go. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and versus on the roof with your brothers, it was more about having fun and talking about how dope you are.
Yeah,
Is that the
it
kind
was
of
like a bonding moment. It's like me and my brothers just like bullshitting, like, yeah, I'm the man and yada yada. Like it's just kind of bravado, like rap talk. It wasn't about like spiritual truths, and I wasn't, you know what I'm saying? But like as an adult, it was like if I have your attention, I'm gonna give you some shit. You're gonna
mm,
walk away feeling inspired. I want you to have a very human moment with me in this time that we have together, right? Like I
yeah,
want you to walk away transfixed from anything that you saw here tonight. So that became a motivation for me. You know what I mean? Whereas as a kid, it was just this is fun. I love doing this. It was you know what I mean? And I think
yeah,
you can't ever lose that. Like to me, I'm still the same 13-year-old kid in my brain, and I'm never going to lose that. I'm still the same 15-year-old that was running around putting posters and stickers up in the streets of New York. I'm still that kid. I still have that same level of whimsy and optimism about this culture, about this craft of being an MC. um, you know and I don't allow my own personal cynicism or my adulthood to remove that from me, because once you remove it, it becomes work, and you don't want that. You want to still keep it. You want to still remind yourself of that rooftop. You know what I'm saying? At least for me, like I always remind myself of that rooftop. I remind myself of being a 15-year-old kid with my brother rapping, and that keeps me motivated, just to see like where I was then and what I've been able to do now. Like, and this is something I impart on my students as well. I tell them, I say, you have the ability to think and speak your way out of your situation. You know what I'm saying? Like, think and speak your way out of the world that is around you. You know what I'm saying? And create your own world, right?
mm,
Rapping, more so than any other thing in my life, has taken me to other countries. It has made me meet people who I love dearly. It has given me a life. And this is literally something that I've came out with my brain and my tongue, right? Like coming from where I come from, coming from the environment and the streets that I come from, to be able to like do everything that I've done in the time that I've been able to do it, literally just using that more so than anything else. Like that to me is amazing. Like I've been able to travel the world rapping. What?
yeah. Wow.
I get paid to do this? What? That's insane to me. And it's never lost on me how grateful I am, even if I'm never like quote unquote famous or blow up, right? Like I just think like the ability to be able to maintain a lifestyle that I like, that I feel good with, and be creative, um, is a success story in and of itself.
Right. Well, when you love the process and you love the results of the process, so
Exactly,
none of the other stuff really matters.
exactly.
Cool. Um, Unlearn the world. If you could teach everybody in the world one concept, what would it be?
To unlearn the world, like that's, what I'm saying. Just to like, like you are a you are a product of the things that you agree to and the things that you have chosen to accept, right? Your reality is a product of those things, right? Like I've read the Four Agreements, if you're familiar with that book at all. It's a book that like talks about being impeccable with your word, don't take anything personally, always do your best, and then there's another one in there, but these are the Four Agreements, that's what they call them, right? But the first one is, be impeccable with your word, because words have power, right? And you are a product of the words that you agree to, and you're a product of the words that you put out in the world, right? So I'm a product of everything that I've accepted about myself, whether it was somebody else telling it to me or my inner voice telling it to me, right? What I've chosen to accept is what has created the world around me as to what's available to me, right? If somebody's telling you you're never going to be anything and you're not going to be successful, and you tell yourself that, that becomes your reality. That becomes the prison that you've created for yourself. You know what I'm saying? You don't feel like you can escape that,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I think that that's one thing that I would impart on anybody, is that you are a product of what you pay your attention to, what you've agreed to, and what you've chosen to accept. It's the three A's, right? Agree, acceptance, and attention, right? We're a product of all of these different things. So if you can start being a little bit more mindful of the things you're paying attention to, if you're a little bit more mindful about the words that you're using and agreeing in the philosophies that you agree to, if you're a little bit more mindful of the philosophies that you've accepted for your life, then I think in that mindfulness you start rearranging what is important for you. And
Mm.
as you do that, your reality starts shifting. Your reality starts changing. Relationships start shifting. You're no longer friends with that person, but you're really tight with this person. And you're starting to see yourself grow and expand and evolve as a human being, and just be kinder to yourself. That would be another thing. It's just be kinder to yourself. We put so much pressure on ourselves to do more. That's part of our capitalist society. That's part of our just kind of our makeup as Americans or westernized people. We have to be kinder to ourselves. We have to start loving ourselves a great deal more in order to love other people.
Mm.
And I think that that's really, it's vitally important.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Agreed. So you said impeccable words. I want to know, what are three of your favorite words of all time?
Woo. Unlearn has to be one of them,
Mm-hmm.
right? It was the word. I first saw this word at the end of the movie Higher Learning, directed by the late great John Singleton. Right, it was about a kid who went to college and all the things that he dealt with. It could have been filmed last year with how relevant it is to today's society. But at the end of the movie, in big bright red letters, it said "unlearn." Now, when I was 13 as a kid, I saw this and I was fascinated by the word. Fast forward years later, I'm an adult. I call myself just as short, right? But then I saw the movie again, and I was like, no, that should be my rap name. Unlearn should be my rap name. So I just use so unlearn. Um, what's another word that's one of my favorites? Um, Ascension, right? Like we all want to ascend or transcend. So like
Mm.
that's these are concepts that I'm often thinking about, right? Like the nature of reality, consciousness, spirituality. So to ascend is to enter into other realms of awareness. We could ascend in this life. You don't need to be abducted by aliens for you to ascend. You just read a book, and now you're in a different level of understanding, and you see the world in a different reality paradigm. So ascension would be one.
Great.
So unlearn, ascension, and I would say love, because love really encapsulates a lot. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think all too often it gets put into the context of relationships, but we're talking about like love for yourself, love for the world around you. Like, what does that mean? Like, in some of the lectures I've watched as an adult, just kind of exploring these themes and these topics, one thing that continuously comes up is that the world or the universe was made with divine loving intent. You know what I mean? So love literally created the entire universe that we exist in,
Mm.
right? So we can start trying to grasp or understand what that love means, then I think we're in a better place to unlearn and we're in a better place to ascend.
That's great. I got 3 words for you. My 3 favorite words.
Yeah, go.
Home. um, damn it. Wait, I had them. Um, the second one is release,
Mm.
and the third one is I lost it.
Ah, I was
I
here
had it.
sitting here with bated breath, like, what is he gonna say? What is he gonna say?
I'll
But I like those. Yeah, home, release.
and then there was I had it. I literally just had it,
Oh
and
man.
nope, it's gone. I guess it's not my favorite word. So
Yeah, but home is good because that could mean so many things. It's like love, right? Home
yeah,
could be, it's comfort. So I like
yeah.
that.
The third one
There we
is
go.
cooperate.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah,
Home, release, cooperate. All right.
yeah. I love the word
Nice.
home because you can say it and like the H sound is like, you know, and then
It's home.
yeah, and then the ohm
Yeah.
is like the sound of the
Mm-hmm.
universe.
Yep.
And then when you say home, it like has a vibration at the end that you can like
100%.
feel inside.
I
And
like
then
that.
yeah, release in the same way is like you can say release, it's like release.
It's almost an onomatopoeia.
Exactly.
Nice.
Yeah, both of those words are kind of like onomatopoeias.
And then
And then
cooperate.
yeah, that one is a more recent one.
Yeah. That's interesting because like my criteria for favorite words is what they represent, where I think for you it's not necessarily what they represent, even though that may be a factor, but it seems to me that your favorite words are the way that they're articulated. Like just
Yeah, at least
how they're
recently.
said.
It's
Awesome.
been an interest of mine.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Words are very like it's magic. You know what I'm saying? Like we take for granted the importance of words and language, right? Because we're
Yeah.
talking all the fucking time. So it's
True.
it's really interesting. Like you're literally creating spells when you talk, and people don't recognize like the importance and the value of that.
Yeah. In English particularly, I don't know if it's the same in other languages, but in English, like the language is designed based around using the sounds that like people can understand. If that
Mm-hmm.
makes sense.
Yeah,
Like
no,
your
totally.
words like literally like impact people's brains in certain
Mm-hmm.
ways.
Yeah, that's never lost on me. It's an important understanding to have, especially if you're going to use words for creativity.
As a rapper.
Yep.
Cool. So what are 3 things that you want everyone to know about you?
um, I laugh because it's just like that's like heavy, right? Like that's like really existential. It's like how do I want the world to understand me? It's
Exactly.
that you can change, right? Like that. I think that's one thing I've been thinking about like a lot is like I'm about to be 40 this year, so I've been thinking a lot about like just how many lifetimes I've lived in this lifetime. Like there was a time I was a child, and there was a time that I was a child and I couldn't speak, so I just had motion, I just had feeling, right? And you can have those memories, but you have no language to articulate what you were going through at that age, right? So just like you evolve, you grow. So like I think I want people to just be able to see that growth in me. Like you can
You're
step into
always
purpose.
changing.
Yeah, you're always changing, and you're doing so to step into your purpose, right? The universe has a plan for you, right? So I want people to know, like, I first recognized that the universe had a plan for me. And then secondly, I had the courage to do it. It's courage to do. It's one thing to be aware, right? We can all be aware of something, but to actually pursue it after the awareness portion of it is the most daring and challenging thing that
Yeah.
we can do.
And
Um,
scary.
scary as hell, scary as hell, super
Yeah.
frightening, but um, that I'm loving. That I have so much love for like humanity and the world around me, and it may sound like really weird hippie shit and like patchouli oil or whatever the case is, but it's true. Like I have a lot of love to give the world, you know, and a lot of that has to do with like love that I may feel I lacked as a child or whatever the case is, or love in or unrequited love in relationships. But I came to the determination a few years back that rather than me loving any one singular person, or rather than me loving particular people, I'm gonna love everything, right? Because I'm in purpose, right? So if I'm living in purpose, my life is a expression of love, right? So like I want people to understand that there is love there, that there's, you know, I'm loving, even in my criticisms, even in my annoyance, I'm still loving. I'm still gonna, you know, I'm not sure what that third one is yet. I'm not sure, you know, because I don't feel like my life is done yet. So you know, this that chapter isn't written
Hmm.
in terms of like the legacy that I want to leave or what I want people to know me for. Right? I can live another 30 years and maybe renounce everything I've done in the 40 years prior. Who knows, right? But I think like that has to. I'm gonna leave that open ended because there's so much more life to live.
Hmm.
There's so
Well, I
many.
think you got three. I think you got three. You said you're living with a purpose, you have a lot of courage, and you love everything.
Well, yeah, I don't. Yeah, I think no. What I was saying that you can grow, you can evolve, like that. I've you know what I'm
Mm,
saying, and then the love part. So like those were kind of like two. You can count them as three, but ultimately anything I would add on top of that, I'm gonna leave open ended because I have plenty of life to live. I have plenty of life that I want to live, and there's gonna be so many adventures that are gonna come from that that it could be profound in terms of what else that I want to give the world. So we'll see.
yeah, amazing. What does your spirituality practice look like?
Oh, it's evolved so much over the years. Like, you know, I grew up, so it's interesting. I grew up Jewish, right? Like the mother who raised me up until I was 13 was Jewish. So I remember going to synagogue. I remember all of that. I remember my concept of God was very much rooted in Judeo-Christian traditions, right? My
Mm,
grandmother, who my biological grandmother was a devout Christian woman until her dying day. I was raised up until 13 years old going to synagogue and celebrating high holidays and all of that. At 15, I converted to Islam. I became a Muslim. I was a strict Orthodox Muslim for most of my adulthood. So from 15 to about 30, I was a
whoa,
devout Muslim.
what does that
Um,
mean?
well, it means like, you know, prayers, praying, you know, celebrating the holidays, fasting on Ramadan, praying most, you know, five times, almost five times a day, abstaining from pork, doing a lot of, you know, religious things like that, reading, like learning Arabic, reading scripture, you know, volunteering in the community, a lot of different things, right? Just kind
Mm,
of living a pious, righteous, spiritual life as it relates to this interpretation of God through Islam.
right.
But then around 30, 32, I started kind of not necessarily moving away from Islam. I still consider myself a Muslim, even though I'm not as actively practicing. But I've chosen to incorporate other philosophies into my spiritual practices, right? Like New Age philosophies and meditation and with mindfulness and the value of healing in different ways, like holistic healing and you know just like other philosophies, other practices, other ideas as it relates to consciousness and what it is to be righteous and metaphysics, right? Like just kind of the science behind spirituality. So as I've gotten older, what I've come to realize is that religion is one thing. Religion is superstition and ritual with meaning. Whereas spirituality is a science that shouldn't be followed, but as much as it should be applied, right? What we're dealing with when we're dealing in the spiritual world is we're dealing with unquantified science. So it's a science that should be applied to your daily practice. Being kind to somebody. There's something that is um, that you can quantify in terms of the kindness that you share with others. You can literally quantify it and measure the value of it if you just kind of related it to a physical scientific model. But aside from that, the moral reward that you get from being kind, feeding, taking care of the sick, feeding the homeless, feeding the hungry, those kind of things are still very much in play, and you can still being kind to people in terms of just smiling, right? There's so many people who just walk through the streets hustling and bustling, and they never take the time to just look at another human being and just smile, right? Like a smile can be charity, like it's been said in certain traditions. um so just adding these other like things in terms of like spiritual awareness like has really helped me evolve, kind of moving away from orthodox Islam because I was finding it a little bit too rigid, right? Like you can't really put God in that kind of box anymore. And for some people it works, and I'm very respectful to anybody who feels like Christianity, Judaism, Islam, if that works for you, then mazel tov, go for it, rock out. For me, I think that I've been blessed to have a certain level of intellect that goes beyond these confined boxes of spirituality, right? God, the
Mhm.
concept of God to me is so much larger and so much more awesome that I can spend the rest of my life trying to explore it and still not scratch the surface. So I'm not going to be one to think that I have all the answers, right? But I know
Mhm.
where to start
All right.
asking the questions. So I think my entire spiritual practice is pursuing the answers to these questions. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. And why not, right? Like we
Yeah,
have access to all this information now that nobody ever had before. So like,
100%. The whole of human knowledge is literally in your phone. It's why not take advantage of that? Why not expose yourself and introduce yourself to other concepts aside from the ones that you grew up with? I couldn't in good faith be called unlearn the world if I didn't set to challenge my own ideology every now and again.
yeah, like the way I look at it is like with all this information, I feel like, I mean, people can do whatever they want, but also like you have the opportunity to really create your own religion. Like every individual, like you can read, the thoughts of millions of people and make your own decisions about stuff.
Yeah, I just think that
That's why I look at it at
I think
least.
we have to first really, just like your pursuit of being an artist, right? You have to be really honest with yourself. I think we have to really kind of unpack our entire concept of what God is. And I think over the last maybe 5, 6, 7 years, I've been doing a lot of that unpacking and just starting to recognize like, yeah, it's not always like and so. It's not always what I've been told. It's not there's a lot of gray area in the black and white that I've been given. And let me kind of
Yeah.
pursue
You got to
these.
unlearn the world.
Exactly. You have to pursue these various shades of gray and continue to challenge the status quo. Continue to challenge what you've grown up to accept, right? We kind of matter of factly act on things that we accepted a long time ago without ever thinking about or challenging why we even believe these things to begin with. You know, yeah. Today's what, Monday. Yesterday was Easter. It was surprising to me how many people just kind of celebrate Easter, and they're not really Christian. They don't really subscribe to that, but they celebrate Easter nonetheless. It's like, well, why do you do that if you don't consider yourself a member of this religion? If you don't consider yourself somebody who subscribes to this idea or this thought, they're like, oh, it's family tradition, right? And it's like, oh, well, you're just going by what's accepted. You're not really challenging, you know what I mean? The status
Yeah.
quo of belief in the belief system and the structure and in certain cases the prison of belief systems. Um, so why would you do that? So for me, I started kind of questioning like, why am I doing this? Why am I
Yeah.
praying like this? Why am I celebrating this holiday? Do I really believe this? Do I really feel this way? Do I really like, you got to start questioning these things, or how can I be better at this, right? If I'm really into prayer, how can I be better at this by better understanding my concept of God, right? So what I've come in my spiritual awakening or my spiritual studies, I started recognizing like my concept of God has shifted drastically. which means that my communication with this God is completely different, right? My view, my understanding of it is completely different. It's shifted. So my relationship with this is completely different. And I welcome that change. I welcome that evolution because in doing that, I have had more spiritual experiences that have led me to a truth of some sort, more with this newer understanding than when I was 5 times a day praying on a carpet. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
and that's not disrespect to the Islamic religion. I love the Islamic religion to this day. I hold it in my heart dearly. But with that said, having moved away from the traditional way of practicing in it, I've tapped into something that's larger, that I feel more. It's given me more insight, more intuition in terms of just how to deal with people, how to deal with the universe, how to deal with the world. And I think I'm better off for it, whatever that decision was to have me kind of move away from it and venture off into my new journey, so to speak.
Yeah, I love that. That sounds like a great way to approach it. The A realization that I came to yesterday about in regards to Easter is that like Easter is about the rebirth of Jesus, and
Mm-hmm.
then but it also like an American. I mean, like the date that it lands on, I think is kind of arbitrary, but it like aligns with spring equinox, which
Mm-hmm.
is like like a rebirth kind of idea as well.
Yeah.
So like both of those ideas play into each other, and then I like looked at it as an opportunity for myself to be reborn as well, and like
Mm.
what can I let go of, and what can I take on going
Yeah.
forward.
See, I mean, that's a very interesting way of looking at it. You know what I'm saying? I think people are able, I think now more so than ever, like you know, our progressive movements in this society are starting to challenge a lot of these status quos, for better or for worse, right? Like we get into this, hyper liberal, hypersensitive world that we often dabble in. But I think even in doing so, we're questioning a lot of the things that we've just kind of matter of factly accepted for generations, right? So I
Hmm.
think that questioning is it's really going to help us in terms of hastening our awakening.
Yeah, totally. Cool. So I just have a few more questions that I just want to get here in the end. These are questions that I ask everybody
Okay.
that comes on the show. So imagine that 1 million people are lined up, um, and they're all holding a phone and they're all about to listen to one of your songs. What song would you want those 1 million people to listen to?
Oh God. Um, it's gonna be a song off the most recent album, Late Years, number one. Um, Now I got to think about what song that is. 1 million people listening to one song. It almost sounds like the theme of a movie, right?
Yeah.
1 million people listening to one song. What will it be? I think it would have to be Moonlit.
Moonlit.
I have a song on my album. I also have a video out. You guys can check it out. Type "Unlearn the World" and "Moonlit." It was co-produced by my man DJ Soros, who's my DJ. Um, I think it really eloquently tells my story. Also, aside from the new Rakim, aside from "Let There Be Light," "Moonlit." I think it's because it's a classic hip hop record. It has that boom bap classic hip hop feel to it. Um, Very introspective, joyous, and it represents hip hop in a really good way. You know what I'm saying? I would say the other one would be Your Favorite Rapper's a Liar, which I put out a music video for, which is a really great record, but it's more like, it's more speaking on social issues, where Moonlit is more like spiritual almost. It's more existential. You know what I mean? And I think
Hmm.
you leave the song feeling good about life, about how things are. So that would be the one. Like, when you're dealing in the millions in terms of people, you want to give them a feeling, and a good
Right.
feeling at that. You don't want. So
Awesome. And there's a video that goes along with it as well.
yep.
Nice. I'm definitely going to check that out. Cool. So my next question is, I mean, it seems like clearly you're somebody that enjoys listening to albums.
Yes.
So the question that I ask everybody is, like, what are 2 albums that I've probably not heard that are great albums that I should listen to?
Have you heard Frank Ocean's Channel Orange?
Ooh, that is a lovely album, and I've heard it a lot of times.
Okay. Sade's Love Deluxe.
Ooh, I'll write that one down.
Okay. Sade's Love Deluxe. Aside from hip hop albums, Sade's Love Deluxe is by far one of my favorite albums on the planet Earth.
Amazing.
So much so that I will never sample a Sade record as much as I'm a producer. Sade is kind of like sacred to me, right?
What if she asks you to?
Oh, well, then we have to negotiate that and figure it out. But I would, you know, I would be shy to accept that. That's just too much. That's if I'm first of all, if I'm in a room with Sade, I don't even know what my brain can't even fathom that right now.
Yeah.
What's another album though? Like Nas-O-Matic. Have you heard Nas-O-Matic?
Oh, of course, yeah.
Okay, good. Then in that case,
I don't know. Maybe think something a little obscure. An album that you loved as a kid. Maybe something you were exposed to while you were traveling internationally.
There we go. Got it. Nana Cherry's Homebrew.
Ooh.
Nana Cherry Homebrew. This is the album that made me want to do music, right? So like, there's a difference between me wanting to rap and me wanting to do music. Nana Cherry made me want to do music. It was a CD that I stole from my mother's friend. We were in her house. I was rummaging through her CD collection, and I found this, and I had a crush on the girl who was on the cover. I thought she was gorgeous, so I borrowed the album, and I listened to it, and it was an amazing, eclectic compilation of hip hop. I mean, it was all her music, but it was hip hop influenced. She had a song with Gangstar. She had a song with Michael Stipe from REM. Like it just ran the gamut in terms of like the music that was popular in the 90s, right? It was a perfect time capsule of early to mid 90s music. The vocals are to this day, I can still hear them. Like, the rap part she was rapping, she had other rappers on it, the beats, everything. You would definitely enjoy that album.
I hope I can find it. It's online?
Yeah, you should totally be able
online.
to find it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Got it.
So, yeah,
not just like your mom's friend made a CD.
Yeah. Shout out to Mavis. She was great. Like she was dope. She was a really cool lady. And that album.
Awesome.
Changed.
I love that recommendation. That is a great one. Definitely nobody has recommended that one yet. So
good.
Sweet.
Yeah, because I think all too often we think about albums that we've heard in like the last few years, and we don't think about like what was the album that shifted me. Like that was an album that shifted.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
I want to be shifted over and over again.
Yeah. I would also say I would just honorable mention, if you've already heard Frank Ocean's Channel Orange, listen to Frank Ocean's Nostalgia Ultra, which was the project that he put out before that. That literally changed my entire approach to songwriting. So
whoa. Yeah, that is a good one.
Great album.
That very honorable mention right there.
Yes.
Amazing. Thank you for those recommendations.
Certainly.
Cool. And then the last question that I have for you. So you've been, in the hip hop game for like 30 years or something. And like based on your experience, any research you've done, like what would you say is the secret to becoming a famous rapper?
I'm still trying to figure that out. I'm not famous yet. So but from my analysis, talent, money, a whole shit ton of luck, and drive. Brutal, honest, passionate love. You know what I'm saying? Like that for me is like the key. You can criticize any hip hop artist about their content, their wordplay, this, that, and the third, but know for a fact, regardless of where you land on their brand of creativity, that they have worked their fucking ass off to get where they are. They have sacrificed a lot. They have experienced trauma in ways that you will probably never be able to articulate. And their story represents that. And that authenticity to that story is what makes it hip hop. It's what makes it successful, right? Because I could sit here and criticize young kids and the music they're making nowadays. No, you know what kind of lives they were living before this? It was probably 10 times worse than anything I could have imagined, right? So for them to be in the space that they are in now, performing for the rest of the world, where they could be in Atlanta or New York or California robbing somebody or doing drugs or selling drugs, or that's a miracle, bro. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? It's a miracle that they're able to do that. So that's the one thing I would say is like you need that. You need that like that brutal, honest passion to do this and say, I'm going to make a way. You know what I mean? And not a lot of people will claim they have that in them, but not a lot of people do when the chips are down. So you
Yeah.
gotta give props where props are due.
Amazing. I love that answer. Nobody's said anything like that before when I've asked. So
Good.
awesome. That's great
Good.
perspective. Cool. Well, UnLearn the World. It was really a pleasure talking with you today. I just want to give you like a couple minutes here if there's anything you want to say. We've been talking for like 2 hours. So like imagine
That's fine.
people are getting here. It's the end of the podcast. What do you want to leave the people with?
Yeah, just find your own passion, be creative. Like, we're in a new era. This is a paradigm shift. Everything that we've been experiencing over the last year has made us look within because we couldn't go out. So take advantage of that. Enjoy music, enjoy food, be kind to yourself, love yourself, tap in with my music, unlearn the world. Follow me on Instagram, all that social media stuff. Look out for new music videos, all those things. But just let's stay tuned. Let's be friends. Can we be friends? Let's all be friends.
Awesome. And you'll be able to find the links to all those things in the video description. So I'll make it easy for everybody. And awesome. Unlearn the World. Thank you again.
Thank you, brother.
It's truly my honor to talk with you today.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. It was great. Thank you for all the dope questions.
You're welcome. Cool. Well, I hope you have a great rest of your night. And my gosh, this interview is gonna drop in like 2 weeks. Not this
Okay.
Saturday, the Saturday after that.
Cool. Also on YouTube, or where would people be able to find it?
Yes, famousrappernetwork.com.
Nice. I love it.
Yeah.
All right, man. Thank you so much again.
Thank you. All right.
Take it
Bye-bye.
Peace.
Focus on love what's in focus. Aim for above because the ceiling's bogus. Focus on love what's in focus. Aim for above because the ceiling is bogus. Focus on love what's in focus. Aim for above because the ceiling's bogus. Focus on love what's in focus. Aim for above because the ceiling is bogus. I wanna lay down a never-ending road. We never go to